Welcome to Financial Freestyle. I'm Ross Mack, and this is sponsored by Vanguard. Welcome to Financial Freestyle here on Yahoo Finance. I'm your host, Ross Mack. Now look, no matter where you are on your own financial journey, it always takes a first step to actually get to success. And guess what, man? You've landed at the perfect place because I'm going to be talking to some of the most influential people in the world, and they're going to be uncovering some of their secrets to success. And today's no different because I'm talking to the co-founders of Eastside Golf, that being Earl Cooper as well as Olajuwon Ajanaku. Fellas, how y'all doing, man? I appreciate y'all for being here.
Doing good,
great.
man.
Thanks for having us.
Definitely appreciate it.
Man, I just want to commend y'all, man. Y'all definitely pushing the culture forward, man. Congratulations on all the success. But to our viewers, right? Who is O? Who is Earl?
Yeah. Olajuwon, from East Atlanta. Been playing golf since I was 6. I'm motivated. I've always wanted to turn pro in golf. Went to Morehouse College, but was in finance, and to fund my dream, I started a company. It's called Eastside Golf. So,
Yeah. And for me, Earl Cooper from Wilmington, Delaware, started playing golf at the age of 6 as well. I always like to say I didn't like playing golf initially, but it wasn't until I saw the opportunities that it could present. So I ended up winning the Golf Channel Drive, Chip and Putt. That got me an opportunity, kept going, golf scholarship to Morehouse. But I'm one of, highly decorated PGA professional. I've worked at some really good country clubs across the country. And in 2016, I was named Golf Digest one of the best teachers in America. And proud to say, joined O kind of 6 months later, and we've been off to the races. So
let's actually talk about that, right? What made you guys go full throttle when it came to Eastside Golf? What was the motivation behind it?
yeah. Just to take a step back, me and Earl, we met in college. We won a national championship in 2010 and at Morehouse College. And after I graduated, my major was accounting, minor in finance. I turned pro in golf. I did that for a couple of years, won a couple of mini tour events, but it got to a point I just couldn't afford it anymore. Taking up by jobs, and I had to give up my dream. But I won a couple of mini tour events, so I do have professional wins. So literally started my commercial finance career. So I was in corporate finance. I used to finance tractors and trailers, scaled trucking companies, did that for about 10 years. And I got home one day, I was just like, this ain't it. I want to turn back pro in golf. I was about to get a promotion to become vice president of a finance firm out of San Diego. And just fully suited, got home. I was just like, I want to turn back pro, but I knew it'd be hard to find sponsors because I've tried that before. So first things first, let me just make a logo, so the logo that you see, jeans, sweatshirt, Cuban chain, it's me. And I was going to put that on my bag and my polo. I showed it to Earl and I put it on a t-shirt, but I started this brand because I was tired of being told no, no to my dreams, no to the things that I wanted to do, and turning back pro was that one thing I wanted to do. So why not take the entrepreneur route and sponsor myself? So it looks like I'll actually be turning back pro at the beginning of next month. So it's full circle for me.
That's epic, man. I'm wishing you nothing but success and good luck on that. And like I say, y'all boys gonna have to teach me about that. But Earl, what were you doing before Eastside Golf?
yeah, so before Eastside Golf, I just talked about earlier, I was working in the golf industry. So I was a PGA professional working at some good country clubs and teaching a lot. And then I actually took a pivot and took a role in the mayor's office. The mayor's office in Wilmington, Delaware. So I was overseeing, public-private partnerships and doing really well. I actually co-founded another program called HBCU Week. And so grew that, scaled that. And it was just, again, an opportunity for me to kind of get back into the golf space, but on my own terms. And I just, like you said, fell in love with the logo. I knew it wasn't going to be easy. It still hasn't been easy, but it was just something that we believed in, and we could just always kind of relate back to our earlier days. And we talked about kind of this brand really serviced that younger, Olajuwon, that younger O, and just wishing that they had something that, they could relate to, but also have something that they could like aspire to. And it's just like that perfect balance. So it's been an unbelievable ride. There's been a lot of ups and downs, but I'm excited about the future.
I love it. So let's actually go straight to the logo, right? Because when I golf, right, it's one of those, you in the country club, is pretty snobby. You go in there, you got your polo on tucked. You gotta have it tucked into your pants. You know what I mean? So like, what was the inspiration behind this logo?
Uh, so the logo, like I said, it's me, but it's the way that I feel and that I want to feel
Yeah.
out on the golf course, like
Uh,
myself. Being authentic. Jeans, sweatshirt, Cuba link chain. I'm swinging the golf club this way. My Cuba link chain swinging the other way. That's saying I'm literally living within who I am. No matter what I look like, I enjoy this sport and I enjoy what comes from it. Literally the logo has a smile on them, but hopefully other people see this logo in whatever sector of sport, sector of business, and they see that the way into it is being themselves. Our tagline is be authentic. Our just do it is
uh,
be authentic, and that's
Mhm.
the way that we see that the game of golf can grow. And just seeing so many people, take advantage of the game, that's what's missing. And we want people to come into this game as themselves. And that's what the
mhm.
logo, I feel, helps people to do, is be authentic.
And I would
Yeah,
add, I feel like no, I just want to add something quickly to that, to O's point. Like, I feel like the logo also is disruptive in the sense of, naturally we place judgment. And when you see that logo, you may not think that it's a professional golfer such as Olajuwon or someone that has that skill set. And so we also love the fact that, like, you can't judge a book by its cover, right? And so I think that that's another piece of, like, also being your true authentic self doesn't take away from your skill level, and that doesn't mean that you can't compete with the best in the world.
I love it, man. I think that quite often we show up in this world and we have to effectively play the game, right? And I think that y'all logo speaks to people that are, when you go out on the golf course, it's not many people that look like us. And so the fact that you guys are not shying away from that and actually leaning into it, it really speaks to the brand. And I think that's one of the things that, you know, the people see that authenticity, and that's why you guys are so successful. So congrats to that. But let's pivot to, right, getting to where you guys are today, right? Like, let's talk about how you guys started this business and more importantly, how you guys were able to find success.
Yeah. I started the business out of my apartment. Like I said, I was in commercial finance and I I wanted to do something different and it was going to be like a hobby of mine. So I started the business literally June 1st, 2019 of LegalZoom and
Have you got
started an LLC. And I had already started buying inventory, and bought a few pieces. Did okay. Sold a couple, didn't really take it serious, but once COVID hit, I ended up getting let go from my job when right before that was about to get a promotion. And they would have me back if time would surpass, but I couldn't take any chances. I had
Mhm.
something that I loved to do, which was design, which was fashion, and on top of that, clothes. And so why not dive into something along with the sport that I love, golf, and I feel like I could be successful. So I end up, emptying out the savings account. I end up I end up empty out I end up emptying out the savings account, the 401k, sold all the cryptocurrencies, maxed out the credit cards, and bought all inventory with it. And the
Wow,
first 3,000 orders from my apartment, I shipped out myself.
that's
Yeah,
amazing, man.
yeah. And to add to that, I mean, when you think about the organization and the brand now, we scaled it to 20 employees. We have done some
Yeah.
fundraising. We have a headquarters in New York City, but we still try to operate with that scrappy mindset that Elijah had in the beginning, as far as, just figuring it out, doing it ourselves. And so to see the way this company has evolved, and we're just being constantly mindful of the consumer and the point of view that we want out there in the world. But, we've certainly been great to work with a ton of great partners. And we just expanded to like Golf Galaxy, House of Sport, and Nordstrom's as well. So we're very excited
Mm,
about the growth of the organization.
that's remarkable, man. So let's lean into that, right? Because you guys just aren't like a brand where people are just buying it on Shopify. You guys have been able to find a way to have amazing partnerships, right? You just talk about being in Nordstrom's. How do you have an idea and actually scale it to actually scale and actually amplify and build all these partnerships and get in more retailers, et cetera? Like how did that go? Obviously, you talked about raising capital. Like how does an entrepreneur get to where you guys are?
Yeah, at the beginning of it, it is following your dream, following
Mhm.
your what's the goal, or more, what is the thing that you're trying to fix? What's that one thing that since you were growing up, you wish would have changed, that so many other
Mm,
people would have thought would have changed, or that you can help, that you have so much experience in. When you look at golf, me and Earl have over 50 years of experience. We've both been playing since we were 6 years old. 50 years of experience combined, him living in Delaware, me living in Georgia, so many different experiences and different perspectives. And as we grew, we saw that this was a game that we took advantage of as we were growing up. And we saw what it did for ourselves. And I don't speak for myself. I saw what it did for myself, for my confidence, but then for being on time for things. But then on top of that, integrity, honesty, governance of oneself is what golf kind of teaches you. And so all of these great things are put into a golfer just from playing it. If you're going to get really good, it teaches you those things. But we saw this, and now it's like, well, why not give that to so many more people, and why not try to figure out a way, to make it more acceptable. I'll give one example. I used to volunteer coach at First Tee of Detroit at Raccoon Golf Course in Detroit, and I was still at my corporate job, and I'm just coaching, but I'm helping one kid at a time. One kid at a time, one kid, or holding the class of maybe 4 or 5 kids, and I'm just like, dang, like this is good work that I'm doing, but how can I get all of them? How can
mm,
I think of a way? How do they learn? And it's literally through social media, it's through logos, it's through something that kind of like is a little bit rebellious, I would say, and why not come out with something that they can connect with, that they can see themselves within? And so if you can create something, in my opinion, like that, that solves a problem, that gives people uh more of the curiosity of something that's never been presented to them in this way, that they can take advantage of, that can better themselves. This is a solve, and this is a fix, and
mm.
that's where I feel like a lot of entrepreneurs could really elevate, is if they're fixing or solving a problem, but also following their passion.
For us, in scaling a company, I mean, we focus a lot on just the product. Product is king. You got to make sure that you have quality products. Understanding margins, terms, a lot of that goes into it. And the apparel business is a very cash intense business, right? When you think about the investment that you need to make on something now, when you think about just from research and development to sampling and then to actually the production, it could take 6 months. You haven't received a dollar back. And so it's one of those things where for us as an organization, we're constantly being mindful of those buckets, right? I like to say targets, deadlines, and protect the margins. Those are the three things that we're constantly focusing on. And even when you scale these big box, you got to make sure that that product is moving, because you can get a big order from any of the doors that we name, but then there's flashing product when it doesn't move. And so then again, it can either tarnish your brand, or it can have a negative effect where people are like, well, I'm not going to go to, eastsidegolf.com. I'm going to just, go here because it's on sale. So these are all of the little things that you have to constantly be mindful of, that just in any business, but especially in the apparel business where it's a constant grind. And how many times that, you hit for one season, but you got to be able to hit for the next season and the next season. But it's been something where, to O's point, the grind is paid off when it allows us to kind of fuel the impact that we're looking to have on the sport. Or when you see, the numbers according to the National Golf Association, it's just growing, and it's growing amongst
Yeah.
minorities. And so we love that fact that, the growth that we're seeing in the sport, and we're offering a solution to them as well.
So talking to the entrepreneurs, if you were to help them skip some steps or not make mistakes, what were some of your biggest mistakes you guys made and how did you overcome it?
I'll start. Biggest mistakes, I would say definitely uh, don't feel like you have to start off by spending this big absorbent of money to invest. Start off slow, start off small, but make sure it works. Figure out what works for that product, for that logo, for that story. You know,
Well, we're going to take a quick break. And when we get back, we'll have more from Elijah Juan and Earl of Eastside Golf. Welcome back to Financial Freestyle, and we're talking to the co-founders of Eastside Golf. And earlier, Elijah, Juan, you was telling me, right, some of the mistakes that you made early on, but what's also important for the entrepreneurs that are watching is, right, how do we cut that learning curve? So let's actually get to actually how you overcame some of those early mistakes.
I mean, to really overcome and to really, I know you're just spending a little bit, just spending a little bit, or you want to spend a lot because you want to hit that home run. It takes time to build that story up first. See what works with what product, see what works with that logo, and build that line plan. Different SKUs are gonna come on, but take your time, source different things, get the best sample. Like when I first started, I mean, I wouldn't say I got the cheapest sweatshirt, but I did
Yeah,
get the one that was right under Champion. And then I started the brand because I wanted to, build off of something that I would wear. So taking that time out and figuring out those things that work for the brand, I mean, it's most important. But once you figure out, then you can make that bigger investment, because up until then, like I said, just chip away at it, but don't stop until obviously you hit your goal.
Yeah. And I would say, one of the things that I've learned is just strategic planning. You definitely need a strategic roadmap. And I think oftentimes I like to say, plan for the worst and expect the best. Right. I think too often when you creating these models, there's no depth to it. It's just like, oh, everything's going to be perfect and everything's going to be roses. And so I think we've been able to constantly pivot as a brand, right? If something isn't working, you have to have the ability to pivot. I feel like too often, especially when it comes down to business, people tie their emotions to it. And so when you can take your emotions out of it and just look at the numbers, and it could be for a variety of reasons why it's not working, but just don't be afraid to pivot, right? And I think again, when you start out with like a big dream, you're like, man, this is the way I saw it in my dream. And it doesn't necessarily always have to be exactly the way that you saw it in your dream, because there are certain contexts. And like right now we're dealing with tariffs. So it's like, hey, I got to make sure that we still are protecting our margins. So if it, quote unquote, in my dream, I thought it need to be this, but if that's going to have negative impact on the business, then you have to be able to pivot. And so maybe you can address that later, or maybe you can go back to it at another time. But just the ability to constantly pivot, to me, I feel like are the brands that survive. And those are the brands that are around for a long time versus the brands that are just very trendy and just here for a moment.
You brought up a very interesting point, and that being tariffs, right? That is the hottest topic. And whether it's, the auto industry, agriculture industry, and obviously apparel,
Yeah.
how is that impacting the business? And from and I love because both of you guys have such obviously a testament to having a successful business, but you guys are always forward thinking, right? And it kind of goes with being in the fashion industry because you're already thinking about spring 2026. But when you think about tariffs, how are you guys adjusting to that?
Yeah. So one, we're already looking, it's a constant conversation of diversifying, factories and understanding, okay, a lot of goods come out of China, but can you go to other countries like Peru? Is there opportunities in Europe, India, those sorts of places, right? And domestically. So you're constantly sourcing there, but then you also have to say, okay, well, if I'm still getting my product from China, then okay, how is that going to impact my margins? And how does that impact my partner's margin as well, right? So when you sell something for wholesale, everyone's got to holistically, our approach is that everyone's gonna take a little hit here, right? We're gonna ask the manufacturer to say, hey, we're gonna need you to make it for a little bit less. Then we're gonna actually need to maybe take up the price a little bit to protect our margins. And then the same thing when it comes to our wholesaler. They're gonna have to take up the price a little bit. So we're not just saying, all right, we're gonna push it all on the consumer because we're mindful of that, but it's definitely a conversation with 3 different parties that all have their own different interests to make sure that we can continue to be successful. But the beautiful thing about it is, I shouldn't say beautiful, but the thing about it is it's affecting every apparel brand. So it's not just one apparel brand that's not, that's not affected. So we're constantly looking at it. We definitely have some modeling. We will probably see the impact in late Q4 because right now, when you think about fall, all that stuff is pretty much price locked, right? So you're not going to see it immediately right now because most of the goods are already here domestically sitting at our warehouse waiting to be shipped. But certainly, if you talk about Q4, if it still remains, there would be some slight increases across the board.
Awesome, man. So as we get ready to wrap up, what's next? What's next for Eastside Golf?
So we have our first brick and mortar in the U.S. that's opening at Detroit Airport.
Nice.
That's going to be good because just seeing I believe they have maybe anywhere from 85 to 90 million flyers in a year. So to potentially have, a percentage of that to see Eastside Golf, this to be their introduction. I mean, is super dope. Definitely have a new tournament that we are rolling out, and it's called Eastside Golf Open Run. Other than that, anything else, Earl?
Yeah, I mean, we're going to be bringing back the Eastside Golf Invitational. We're constantly expanding doors in Golf Galaxy and Nordstrom's. And just excited about our community day. That's also something that's really big for us. So super excited about just the future of the brand. And I just want to leave one note. Again, you don't have to play golf in order to wear Eastside Golf. So we welcome, men and women to come try out our brand. And hopefully we'll see you out there on the course.
Without a doubt, and y'all gonna be at the Maconomics Wealth Summit, July 19th.
Yes, sir.
Right?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir, Ski. But look, that's it for this episode of Financial Freestyle. A big special thanks to both of y'all, to Earl and Olajuwon of Eastside Golf for sharing a lot of insights, right? But that's it for this episode. Make sure you guys tune in next week for a new episode. Have a good one.
This content was not intended to be financial advice and should not be used as a substitute for professional financial services.